It's Friday, October 4, 2019, and this is Globespan 24x7 News. Good evening and thanks for joining us. My name is Samuel Sugnanan, coming to you live from Georgetown, Guyana. Here are the major headlines for today. Opposition's refusal to return to Parliament may result in a crisis, says Attorney General. Data from recent house-to-house registration to be made available for public scrutiny. PPPC to consider direct cash transfer of some anticipated oil revenues. Gao says second sugar crop behind schedule due to multiple issues. And Rihanna and Letita Wright to be invited to Ghana's 50th Republic celebrations. Over to you, Kingsley.
Thank you, Samuel. Good evening. Let's take a look at regional and international headlines for today. We'll tell you that new efforts are afoot to protect the Caribbean bananas that are under disease threat. Iraqi Prime Minister calls for talks as thousands of protesters defy established curfew. Also, Ecuador declares a state of emergency as fuel protests block roads. And UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson will send Brexit extension letter, the court was told. Let's take a look at these and more in a little while. But here's Abel Harris with sports headlines for today.
Thanks, Kingsley. And now for a look at the sports headlines. Warriors continue unbeaten streak after trashing Tallawahs. Italian tennis umpire suspended for inappropriate remarks to team player. FIFA orders Cardiff City to pay Nate €6 million for Salah transfer. Over to you, Samuel.
Thanks, Abel. And now for a look at the news. A 35-year-old Trinidadian national, Sewak Miraj, will now spend 4 years in jail, after faking his own kidnapping and demanding US $700,000 from his family. He appeared before Magistrate Fabia Azor earlier today to answer to 2 charges: conspiracy to commit a felony and giving false information to the police. The court heard that Miraj, on October 27, 2017, knowingly gave false information to the police alleging that he was abducted and that his captors demanded a whopping US $700,000 for his release. Miraj also, on the set date at Madawini Resort on the Suzaik-Linden Highway, where he was discovered, he conspired with other persons to negotiate for the ransom to be paid. It was previously reported that Miraj came to Guyana on October 27, 2017 under the pretense of attending a job interview. Miraj had a reservation at the Ramada Princess Hotel, but he never checked in. Later on, his relatives received an anonymous call informing that he was abducted and demanded the US $700,000 for his release. Relatives immediately contacted the Ghana police force, who launched an investigation. Later, the entire plan fell apart when police using CCTV footage discovered that Miraj had teamed up with 2 other men who arrived on an earlier flight in Guyana. The taxi driver, after being questioned by police, revealed that he was hired by the men to be taken to a location, after which they exchanged numbers. The taxi driver was told that another friend was coming into the country a few days later and was asked to uplift him and take him to the same location. His sentences will run concurrently, meaning Miraj will only spend 18 months in jail. Following the passage of the no-confidence motion and the court's determination that it was validly passed, the notion of the government operating under a cloak of unconstitutionality has been touted. The government has repeatedly called on the political opposition to return to Parliament so that an extension of the electoral period can be approved given lost time due to the numerous court challenges. But the parliamentary opposition is adamant that they will not be blackmailed into returning to the Parliament, but rather urged the government to abide by the Constitution and dissolve same. Attorney General and PNCR member Basil Williams at the party's press conference today said the government must return to Parliament as a matter of compliance.
We have to go back to Parliament in compliance with Article 1067 of the Constitution. You would recall that it requires, in the case of a no-confidence motion being successful, it had said that the government should hold elections in 3 months. Of course, I said from day one, it's ridiculous that you're asking the government to go to Kingston and ask the chairman and commissioners, including Commissioner Ben, to step out and take their leave. They could stay on the road. We are here to take over because 1067 we must hold elections. At least in the CCJ, they confirmed that it's GCOM that has to hold elections in 3 months and not the government. And the situation is that if you couldn't make the 3 months, the Article 1067 provided for a longer period. But it has to be obtained through a 2/3 majority of the parliament.
The Minister of Legal Affairs contended that given the current circumstances, a parliamentary extension is needed, but should the opposition refuse to participate in the process, that would be tantamount to a constitutional crisis.
Since the 3 months would have been eclipsed, whilst the matters were proceeding through the courts, that 3 months would have gone. So the recourse now is to have an extension for a longer period on the 1067. And of course, you know, the leader of the opposition has been saying that he's not interested, etc. But of course, he's free to say whatever he likes in George Street or on the streets of Georgetown or on the streets of Guyana. So the test is when Parliament is resumed and the matter is called, he must go there and say he's not conforming with the, comply with the Constitution. Once he does that, obviously it would create a situation of conflict, I would say, a crisis situation, which would impel the doctrine of necessity, and of course.
According to Minister Williams, that would leave the responsibility to the head of state, President David Granger, who he maintains continues to act in accordance with the Constitution and the determinations of the CCJ.
All these things were put before the CCJ, and it would be left to the president, who has the remit both to name a date by proclamation and to dissolve Parliament by proclamation. So it would therefore be resolved in that matter. The president has already named the date anyway. He has been saying that consistently, that he will name a date when advised by GCOM. GCOM having advised him, he named the date. So we have an election date.
Minister Williams concluded that the government has always maintained that the conduct of any elections falls under the purview of GCOMs. It's always an imprudent decision to compel the president to name a date for elections without a concrete timeline from the Elections Commission. Despite having rejected the initial proposal put forward by the Working People's Alliance, WPA, and one of its leaders, distinguished economics professor Clive Thomas, of direct cash transfer of some projected oil revenues, opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo has now backpedaled and views this as a viable option. However, Jagdeo, former president, feels that the proposal has some flaws and is unrealistic when it comes to distributing US $5,000 per household with costs in excess of US $1 billion per year, and when Guyana will only collect US $4.3 million per year for the first 4 years.
So at this stage, I am not going to say that the PPP will not consider cash transfer. I'm not saying that. The PPP has to keep its mind open to anything, any method that would reduce poverty, get more jobs to people, get our children to school and getting the best quality education and healthcare. And I don't, in fact, in our manifesto, we're going to be talking about conditional transfer, targeted transfers to vulnerable group right at the beginning. So we have to help single parents. We have to help children. We have to help the older people first. And as our capacity grows and we get more money, we constantly have to see that it's sustainable though. We have to constantly see that whatever we do don't cause us to be worse off than before. And so we will keep an open mind to cash transfers to Guyanese. We'll keep an open mind, and we'll have to go through, look at it carefully and go through all the technical issues to see that you have enough money to actually do this and that it's sustainable in the long term.
We have joining us tonight live to offer his comments and views on the opposition leader's statement, political scientist Dr. David Hines. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Hines.
Hello, good afternoon. Good evening.
Good evening. So I just want to refer to a recent quote in the media. You said in the media, and I want to quote, "It would be suicidal for the coalition to go to an election in which the PPP endorses cash transfers, and they don't. With the PPP endorsing it, it becomes a top electoral issue," end quote. Are you at all surprised by the opposition leader's statement on the cash transfers?
No, I am not. And let me say why I'm not. It's going to shock a lot of people. Mr. Agdio is a serious economist. He's a serious political person. And the proposal from the WPA is a serious proposal. And Mr. Jagdio obviously understands the economics of cash transfer. You listen to him. He understands clearly the economics, and I dare say he also understands the politics. It is a very mature position from Mr. Jagdio, and I have no doubt in my mind that it was well considered by him before the announcement.
Okay. We also have activist Dr. Yog Mahadio. Thanks for joining us also, Dr. Mahadio.
You're welcome.
Okay, I just want to ask, from a background in management and finance, do you think the proposal is workable and could be catered for once oil is on stream in Guyana?
No. The short answer is no. If I may, I do not disagree. In fact, I support Dr. Jagdew's call, and in a way, I support Dr. Hines and the rest. However, I think the bits and pieces that we need to pick out from this is the fact that a thorough analysis needs to be done. I mean, the notion of making cash transfers across to any number of persons is in my mind, no offense meant to you, Dr. Hines, a bit of electioneering, a bit of bubble in the air. For me, infrastructure is important, free education is important, free electricity, all of these things we need to put in place. However, in terms of the cash transfer, I would prefer to see an incentive-based system in place rather than just a free-for-all or just a gift out of the central coffers.
Okay, I just want to refer back to you, Dr. Hines, though. Based on the statement that Dr. Mahadio made, do you think that the opposition leader statement is just for political reasons?
No, I don't think so. And our proposal is not for political purposes. I have to disagree with Mr.
Mahadio.
Can I get the name? Mr. Mahadio, sorry. Listen, Professor Clive Thomas is a leading economist. He's not going to put forward a proposal before thinking it through. People are now talking about we have to think this through. They have to think it through. We have already thought it through. We have taken into consideration all the pros and the cons, and obviously Mr. Jagdio has done so. This is a proposal that is put out there. Places like the University of Guyana, government, the opposition, they should set up technical teams to study this proposal, to put in place suggest modalities for its implementation. But it's a well thought out proposal. And let me say this, it is a policy that benefits 1.2 billion people in the world, over 70 countries. It is not something new. The United Nations, the World Health Organization, the World Bank, they've all studied and thought this through. And so I don't understand why people who are now encountering this thing, they have to think it through. It's a well thought out policy. It's a policy that is grounded in common sense. The effects of the policy have already been studied. It is linked, as Mr. Jagdio pointed out, the policy is linked to increase the quality of education that people get. It has led to increase in terms of healthcare. It has other spin-offs for the economy. So I think people who don't know the proposal should just shut up. Us study the proposal and then come back and talk. We have a lot of people, as Dr. Thomas has said, he called them ignores. These are people who don't know anything about cash transfer, but are prattling about it, and they're just muddling the conversation. I am very sorry.
Well, sorry, you should listen. No. You should listen to yourself a little bit. Is it the same doctor? Is it the same Mr. Thomas that fired or got 10,000 workers fired in this country? Where is the economic policy in that? And everybody, the WPA, you included, I haven't heard a word about constitutional breach. I haven't heard anything, but you're in bed with the government and you're now talking about cash transfer. Now, Mr. Moderator, let me just say this. I'm wondering if we have seen the same clip from Dr. Jagdeo, because I am not seeing a full endorsement from Dr. Jagdeo or Mr. Jagdeo for this cash transfer proposal. He has said he is not opposed to a cash transfer. I can't put words in his mouth, but this is what I'm reading from what he said. He is not opposed to it so long as certain things are in place. He doesn't want a cash give out. He wants an incentive-based system. At least that's what I'm seeing here. So
and neither the WPA.
So the notion
the WPA doesn't want. The WPA doesn't want a free-for-all giveaway. Mr. Jagdeo has shown an understanding of cash transfer. You have not shown an understanding of cash transfer. And so you need not speak on something that you don't know anything about.
No, I disagree.
And for your information, Dr. Thomas did not fire 7,000 workers. Dr. Thomas recommends the government, the state should not do those.
No. No, and I will not allow that to be said. Not when I'm here. No,
this
sir.
Is because it is the truth. You know nothing about Guyanese politics, and you're prattling off.
Well,
you need to go home, do your homework, and come back.
You should go home, because let me tell you something. You are part of a government, and you are saying nothing. You had a COI that recommended not to close the estates. You're doing nothing. The economy is not bankrupt because of the WPA seat in the government.
Dr. Thomas
turning in his grave today.
The recommendations of the COI, for your information.
No, Rodney would be turning in his grave today for all those of us who backed him, not just you. But today, what has the WPA done for the people?
You ran away from Rodney. Where were you when Rodney were around?
You should check.
What Rodney signed?
You should check.
You mention the name Rodney. Where were you? Were you at Rodney side? Are you in the WPA? Are you marching? Did you go to jail?
You should really check your history. There are many people in this country who does a lot of work and struggle a lot.
You guys are imposters.
Your pompousness speaks to, and let me see how many votes it will get you this time, but I can tell you the willy-nilly adoption of any cash giveaways is exactly reflective of what this government has done to the contracts. They are all contracts. Where is the local content policy? Where is your voice for local content policy?
Do you gentlemen see the coalition government coming out with any endorsement for cash transfer?
Talk to the experts.
Well, I can tell you. I can tell you. If Granger had anything, any inkling of an endorsement of something, he would have come out in front. But what's been happening, he has no way, or he has there's nothing in his mind presently to say he's going to endorse this. So it just gives the WPA some electoral kind of platform to stand on to earn some votes. So it's wanting to stay relevant.
The AFC
is lobbying within the coalition for them to speak about this and bring about that discussion about cash transfers.
The AFC has already endorsed cash transfers. The WP has proposed it. The PPP, in a common sense way, has endorsed the cash transfer in principle. The only major political party that has not come out for cash transfer, it is the PNC. The PNC is now under pressure to endorse this proposal because it has now become a major electoral plan. This is going to be the major electoral issue. I can tell you, I've been into 20 communities over the last 2 months, and it is extremely popular on the ground. No political party which is looking to win an election can afford not to embrace cash transfer in one form or the other.
And that's right, because the entire country is impoverished.
Dr. Mahadi, your closing remarks.
Well, the entire country is impoverished, so who wouldn't want to embrace such a notion? But I tell you what you're doing. You're also announcing to the world, leave where you're living and come here. We're going to give you $5,000 a month. There needs to be system in place. There needs to be proper thinking of this. I am not opposed to the cash round, but it has to be an incentive based, not a free for all. And Dr. Hines has rightly said it is not intended to be, but we need to read and we need to be very, very aware that the current government has lost favor because it's not kept up its election promises. And I see this happening again because it's all about elections. It's all about the votes of the poor people and telling them you're going to get 5,000 US dollars, but nothing will happen because the first thing they do when get into office is to give themselves money. To heck with the rest of the people.
Thomas' proposal.
I have lost all respect for Dr. Thomas because of the sugar workers and because of what's happening in this economy.
There you go. So you come on here to chastise.
No.
You haven't come on here to discuss anything.
So because it's Dr. Thomas, everybody must say hail, hail, and agree to it? No. Dr. Thomas is not the only economist in this country.
And Dr. Hines, your final comments.
I think cash transfer is a proposal that is aimed at alleviating poverty. Poverty in Guyana is pegged at between 15 and 25%. It is a big problem in the country. And this is the first major commonsensical proposal that has been put on the table. The WPA says that we don't see this coming on board until 2025. We've also said it must be 10% of our takings. And so, therefore, it's on the table. We welcome the fact that other players, other persons, and we welcome Mr. Mahadio to go and read the proposal, and so that we can have a very sensible discussion rather than this kind of emotional, ignorant nonsense. Because
it is not ignorant. I can tell you who is the ignorant here, because we can only go with your history. What you have done is screw this country up. That's what this current government has done. And now we're talking about election, about cash transfers to win who? We're not going to allow it. The citizens are not going to allow it.
You are not there in Guyana.
I am. Oh my God. Mr. Moderator, we can see who is the ignorant here. Anyway, good night.
Thank you very much. Quite an interesting discussion there on the oil transfers. We continue tonight's news by telling you that following yet another meeting between the chair and commissioners of the Guyana Elections Commission, a decision was taken to have the data collected from the halted house-to-house registration to be made available for the public scrutiny following the encoding process. But PPP-nominated commissioners PB Shadiq relayed that further clarity is needed on what aspects of the data would be used.
There was a decision of the chairman that the data from the house after encoding and so on would be put up for public scrutiny. What the decision is what they're to give us some other information is with what part of the data, if all 370,000 or some part of it is going to be put up for public scrutiny. Okay? Because it has to be scrutinized and so on before you can decide what you're using or not. Good? So that is where the decision is.
Shadiq further added that in her view, only the first-time registrants should be displayed during the claims and objections period, but the chairwoman, according to her, unilaterally decided against it. Now the commission awaits a plan from the chief elections officer.
Well, the chairman did make a decision that from the very beginning I was asking who were the first-time registrants, because to my mind those were the only names that should have been put, during this claims and objections period. But right now they cannot disaggregate because they're still in the process of doing what they're doing. So the CEO is to provide us with some clarity on how they're disaggregating and what aspects of it they are proposing to put up public scrutiny.
The commissioner stated that during the claims and objections period, all the information would have to be cross-matched to ensure its credibility. Shadiq stressed that regardless of how technical the process may seem, there is only one outcome that is being anticipated.
You can only have a list that has a name once. Wherever they registered, the list can only have your name once.
Yes,
okay?
So argue in favor of the last registered.
I don't care where it was registered, as long as it's on the name once. That is our story. I don't care where you registered or when you registered, but your name must be there only once and nobody must be left off. That's all.
No part of the encoding or cross-matching processes should produce a duplicate name should he assert it, deeming that a Solian of the list. Government-nominated Commissioner Charles Corbyn, however, posited that all the steps moving forward will be reflective of the official list of electors. Contrarily, Corbyn noted that all the data from all the various processes will be made public, and this decision found favor with the government commissioners.
All the data from the house to house, plus all the data from the PLE is already up. The transactions from the house to house will also be put up later as soon as we have completed encoding and cross matching.
How long will that?
The details, that process, when the plan is released, we'll see the days, but we're satisfied internally with what is there. Like I said, it is just the detailing of those processes that we want clearly written in writing on the plan. But it will be explained, we understand. It is just a question of it being written down.
The Commission will meet again on Tuesday for their customary statutory meeting to continue crafting a comprehensive plan of action for the March 2, 2020 elections. Meanwhile, Natural Resources Minister Raffle Trotman held engagements with the South Rupununi Development Council SRDC and the National Tushaus Council NTC on October 3 and 4. The meeting served as avenues for the councils to bring to the minister matters of concerns to be discussed and necessary solutions to be found on common ground. The initial meeting with the SRDC sought to address the government's policy on river mining and the protection of the key headwaters in the South Rupununi, status of the operation of the dragger down Kuyuwini River, and the status of the Marudi mediation agreement process. The latter meeting with the NTC served to discuss the possibility for an extension of the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility's FCPF Red Plus project. This is an Inter-American Development Bank funded project that aims at reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation, forest carbon stock conservation, sustainable management of forests in developing countries. The project currently offers an immense amount of support to the council. It also supports some support staff of the NTC and the rental of the building that houses the NTC Secretariat. The project is scheduled to come to an end in December 2019. Remember to like our Facebook page and subscribe to our YouTube channel for the latest news in Guyana, the Caribbean, and around the world. Join us after these messages for more news with Shakima Day.
Travelspan is a proud sponsor of Globespan 24x7 News. Travelspan has some cheap fares to Guyana on American Airlines flights. Fly from January for $234 one-way and $512 round-trip. Take advantage of these cheap fares on American non-stop flights from JFK to Guyana. That's non-stop flights from JFK to Guyana, starting as low as $234 one-way and $512 round-trip. And also has the cheapest fares for Christmas that starts as low as $799 round-trip. Travelspan celebrating 25 years in business with over 10 offices to serve you. Call 718-845-0437. That's 718-845-0437. Or book online at travelspan.com. Book early and save.
Amro's Travel Service is pleased to support Globespan 24x7 broadcasts. We provide travel solutions via our 4 locations in Trinidad. Chabonas at 665-3383, Valpa 645-1604, Port of Spain 625-0800, and San Fernando at 652-4789. Remember, when you travel, Amro's is the way to go.
Welcome back, and now for more news. An inter-ministerial committee has been launched to examine and discuss the proposed calendar of events for Guyana's momentous 50th Republic anniversary celebrations. The committee, led by Minister of Social Cohesion, Dr. George Norton, and Minister of Public Telecommunications, Catherine Hughes, recently met in the boardroom of the Ministry of the Presidency Department of Social Cohesion, Culture, Youth and Sport. The engagement, attended by representatives from various ministries, also included Dr. Paloma Mohammed, Deputy Vice Chancellor of Philanthropy, Alumni and Civic Engagement of the University of Guyana. During the meeting, Director of Culture, Tamika Boatswain, presented the drafted calendar of activities, and a number of recommendations were made, including the installation of a time capsule and extending invitations to international artists of Guyanese heritage, such as Black Panther's Letitia Wright and singing sensation Rihanna. Within the next 2 weeks, the Interministerial Committee will be finalizing a number of recommendations, which will later be put into the Central Mashramani Committee when it is convened. In a bid to encourage public participation, the Ministry of the Presidency Department of Social Cohesion, Culture, Youth and Sport has since extended a call for submissions for the logo, theme and jingle specific to branding the slated events during the festival period, as well as submissions for the National Film Festival. Meanwhile, the government, through the Attorney General's chambers, moved to the court to ask for a stay in the decision by the Guyana Elections Commission to merge the data gathered from the recently concluded house-to-house registration with the existing National Register of Registrants. At that instant, Attorney General and Minister of Legal Affairs Basil Williams, ST, protested the decision, saying that there could be no question of merging the current register with the new register. The Attorney General has earlier appealed that part of the CJ's order on August 14, which said that GCOM should not remove the names of any persons currently on the National Register of Registrants. At the PNCR press conference held today at the party's headquarters, the Legal Affairs Minister noted that nothing such has happened with the case due to the appeal court recess.
As has been happening throughout, having appealed, we applied for a stay. The stay would normally go to a single judge in chambers, and if it's not successful, you could then go to the full bench for a review of the decision of the judge in chambers. But of course, you know, when that case started, the Court of Appeal had just gone into recess, and so nothing could have happened until the court is now back on course.
He noted that the government has also filed a motion requesting for a speedy hearing of the matter. The motion for a speedy hearing will come up in the courts on October 15, but as it treats with the matter relating to the stay, the Attorney General had this to say.
But what has happened in these cases, as you know, since the first instance approach in the no confidence motion, the courts haven't been granting any stays. Instead, what they do is try to hear the matter expeditiously.
The AG contended that a speedy hearing is more important than actually being granted a stay in the CJ's orders.
Which is what we would be very happy with.
GCOM had announced that in light of the Chief Justice ruling, a decision was made for the data gathered from the house-to-house registration exercise to be merged with the existing National Register of Registrants database. It was also noted that the Commission would move to an extensive claims and objections exercise before extracting the preliminary list of electors. Meanwhile, the Guyana Agricultural Workers Union, after a meeting with the National Association of Agricultural, Commercial and Industrial Employees and GAISUGO on October 1, 2019, expressed concerns after learning that the ongoing second crop is behind the corporation's production schedule. Here is that story.
GAU says at this time the industry is in the 7th week of the 18-week scheduled second crop. A statement from the union said that from the engagement, they learned that as of last week, the corporation's aggregate second crop production reached 21,869 tons of sugar. In keeping with the production schedule, sugar production ought to have reached 33,892 tons. Thus, GAISUGO said at the time they were in a deficit of 12,023 tons, or was nearly 35% below its anticipated production. When the GAHU sought a breakdown of the data, the picture became even more alarming. At the Albion Estate, GAHU learned since the commencement of the crop, the factory has been plagued by several breakdowns. The statement highlighted that information reached the union indicates that nearly a week of operation so far has been lost to various issues that brought the factory's operations to a halt. According to GAHU, open quote, "We understand that the issues that popped up are not in a particular section, but have appeared in many of the various areas. It is indeed regrettable that just a few weeks after the crop's commencement, such issues are appearing, recognizing that maintenance would have been conducted during the out-of-crop period." End quote. At the Blamont estate, Gahu said the factory has some defective components that are contributing to sugar losses. The workers, through their shop stewards, have raised these concerns with the management, which apparently is hamstrung from really alleviating the issue. Also, the workers have expressed concerns about the quality of canes available for harvesting. They disclosed that the cane yields were way below estimates. At IFLOT, while the estate over the last 2 weeks has managed to surpass its weekly production target, it still continues to experience difficulties with the factory. For the last few crops, the IFLOT estate has been plagued by several problems. Extensive works, which are set to be executed during the out-of-crop period, it seems, are not effective, and we wonder whether there is a need for closer examination. The GAU statement further stressed that, open quote, "It seems that the sugar industry is being conveniently or maybe willfully ignored by the powers that be. We hasten to wonder whether or not they are seeking to engineer a fait accompli in an effort to justify certain questionable measures we understand they have in mind and possible at heart." Dahu says the sugar industry has all the tools to succeed. They pointed out that the industry's turnaround cannot be delinked from a motivated workforce, which in this day and age is working for rates of pay last adjusted in 2014. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day.
Meanwhile, Minister of Public Infrastructure David Patterson disclosed that he has met with contractors concerning the breach of the Myconi's earthen embankment caused by the recent spring tides. Among the persons he met were 4 stone suppliers and 5 contractors with the necessary equipment and the experience doing sea defense works, according to the Department of Public Information. Based on the current stage of the damage assessment to the foreshore, it is estimated that 50,000 tons of boulders are needed to execute emergency works along the impacted area between Datsing and Fairfield. Minister Patterson noted that his ministry's primary focus is to seal the breaches, as the next spring tide is scheduled to occur in 23 days. Currently, one of the breaches is inaccessible. At present, excavators are extracting mud from the Bellamy Canal to build a wall behind the existing boulders along the foreshore. This is needed to facilitate the traffic of materials to the breached sites. Minister Patterson also met with residents in the Myconi area to reassure them that all of the government's resources are being directed to ensure that the breach is sealed. It is estimated that 400 households across 465 coastal communities have been affected by the sea defense breach caused by the spring tide during September 26 to October 2. In response, the 24-hour National Emergency Operations Center was activated. Thus far, the areas affected are farmlands in Myconi and regions along the coast, with the exception of Region 1. The Civil Defense Commission and ministerial teams are coordinating the disaster relief efforts. You'll hear now that President David Granger, in his address to those gathered at the inaugural teaching conference, said that his government intends to invest largely in the education sector. With that said, the president disclosed that not only will students be allowed to attend the university without a cost attached, but it is his hope that teachers too can benefit from this entitlement.
Every teacher also will have an opportunity to attend university to benefit from improved teacher training.
The Guyanese head of state reiterated that the importance of teachers must never be understated or downplayed, as their role is critical to national development.
Educators are the sinews of the education system. They are central to achieving the aims of education, which are to produce graduates equipped with the knowledge, skills, and values, not only for their own personal development, but for national development, which is one of the objectives of this symposium today. They are the ones who guarantee quality assurance in education. Educational standards will decline unless there is a core of trained and qualified teachers capable of upholding the standards that we expect.
As such, President Granger said the training of teachers must be a continuing process. He said that for that reason, he made those timely donations to the Cyril Porter College of Education. CPCE is the institution responsible for the training of teachers, and the president boasted of increased allocations to the students of the college.
And I intervened again with the Cyril Porter College of Education to ensure that the stipends paid to training teachers increase, and this will be done. Increased by 66%.
The president concluded that the team is apt because his government's intention for the teaching profession will be seen as an investment.
Yes, we do expect increased revenues from petroleum after 2020, and much of it will go into the Sovereign Wealth Fund, but I've announced publicly that a significant portion will be devoted to public education.
In other news, World Teachers' Day will be celebrated tomorrow, October 5th, 2019. Activities are centered around acknowledging, evaluating, and enhancing the instructors of the world. In light of this celebration, Globespan 24x7 compiled a special report to recognize the contribution of educators here in Guyana.
As a child, you're always encouraged or inspired to choose a career to pursue when you grow up. It could be a doctor, a journalist, a writer, a future president, even a teacher. But think about it. Who makes this possible? There's a simple answer: a teacher. Without them, none of those careers would be possible. As the world celebrates Teachers' Day 2019, we are reminded of the invaluable contributions they've made to society. Today, in a Globespan 24x7 special feature, we spoke with the Guyana Teachers Union General Secretary, a decorated educator and outstanding trade unionist, Coretta MacDonald. In the exclusive interview, MacDonald shared that for some who venture into the profession, becoming a teacher was a calling, one that helped to inspire thousands of lives.
I first want to say to you, teaching is a noble profession. It's not just a vocation, it's a calling. And so if you don't have that kind of inclination, that kind of calling, you're not going to make a good teacher. With regards to the positives of teaching, one can never outdo what you do as a teacher. The sacrifices you make with regards to your learners being able to learn, being able to grasp the concepts. And so if you are now venturing into the world of work and you want to become a teacher, just prepare yourself to be patient, to being tolerant, to not receiving any big fancy salary, but to be prepared to work to change lives.
According to her, the teaching profession is not without its challenges. Over the years, one of the crucial things teachers struggle with is dealing with parents.
But as a teacher, you have to always have an open mind, and you always have to deal with parents on the level at which, or don't let me say the level at which they come, but you always have to deal with them as a person to another person. Sometimes we prejudge people, maybe from their appearance, from the way they speak, or from the way in which their children operate. We prejudge them. But we have to deal with persons as persons. Okay. And then, sometimes parents, as a teacher, like I said, you have to learn to be very patient and very tolerant. So if you have a rowdy parent coming to you and you as a teacher, you return that with rowdiness, then it's not going to work. As a teacher, you have to be able to win your pupils, your students, and then you'll be able to win the parents. Okay.
Every child is different, despite they may share similarities with other kids. She said too that every child also learns differently and needs special attention. Some children respond to learning that's presented in a fun way. In that case, MacDonald shared how she helped a struggling child learn by integrating his love of a sweet cricket game into his daily work.
Over time, you learn as a teacher that you look at the things children like. You get to find out things your children like. I remember way back in the days as a teacher at the East Repentance Primary School, I had a child there who couldn't read, he couldn't write, he knew his name, but he couldn't identify letters and that kind of thing. But he liked cricket. And so I used cricket then, because this was my special child. So when everybody else was doing the regular work, he was doing something else. But he liked cricket. And so I used cricket as the game to motivate him to do things. Nice. And so we played, we would have our discussions during lunch break, during the morning recess and the afternoon recess, and sometimes after school, we would have our little talks. While the other children are working, we would have our little talks. And he knew that to play cricket, you had to have a ball, a bat, you had to have fielders, which included a bowler and a wicket keeper, and then you had to have the umpire. He knew all of those things. And so from there, we started making little sentences, oral sentences. And we talked about what the bowler does and how important is the bowler, why you have to have a bowler. The batsman, how important is the batsman, why you have to have a wicket. And from there on, we started, we identified, we had those words written. You had the picture, you had the word. And so he looked at the picture and he was able to match the picture with the word. Of course, we had to do some letter sounds, we had to do our phonics. So we got ball, ball. And with that, he was able to identify the letter B. And so we have to, in finding fun ways to get our children to learn, we have to understand, we have to find out what they like, and getting into what they like would motivate them to learn.
Teachers are an extremely important facet of any society for a number of reasons, and their role in society is both significant and valuable. It is only right that teachers are given a day to celebrate their accomplishments, relax and reflect on their contributions to society.
And you know, sometimes when you hear parents talk about you as a teacher, or you hear children or students talk about you, pupils or students talk about you, it's amazing sometimes you are not even conscious of some of the things you do in the classroom, but some of those things would have impacted on the lives of students. Just yesterday, I was in a store, myself and one of my colleagues, we were trying to get some tokens for teachers, and I met a young lady there. You wouldn't imagine this young lady being a student of mine. And she said, "Miss," and I turned around. She said, "Yes, you taught me." And I'm trying to figure out where, when, and you know. She said, "Yes, you taught me." She said, "And you know what? We were just trying," and that was at David Rose Community High School in West Rumvelt. It's now David Rose Secondary. I taught her there. She said, "We formed a group and everybody was asking about you, and I was telling them, oh, some of them are overseas, and she was telling them, oh, Miss Coretta, she's creating waves in Guyana. Lots and lots of things are happening for her. But you know what? She isn't getting old. She's just the same person." So I said, "Well, what about me that would have caused you people?" She said, "Because you were the youngest on the staff, and some of us were older than you were at that time. And we just couldn't imagine how this little girl could come in here and want to tell us what to do and what not to do." She said, "But Miss, we thank you."
Teachers play an extraordinary part in the lives of children for the formative years of their development, and the importance of teachers is something that cannot be understated. They involve themselves in molding their students into responsible citizens of their country. Within a school, if teachers are well educated and if they are intellectually alive and take keen interest in their job, then only success is ensured. Happy Teachers Day to all educators across Guyana and around the world. Teachers, we salute you. For Globespan 24x7 News, Shakima Day.
We'll now take a short commercial break. Do stay tuned for regional, international, and diaspora news with Kingsley Bryan.
To keep up with breaking news in Guyana, the rest of the Caribbean, and on the international scene, like, follow, and subscribe to Globespan 24x7's Facebook and YouTube news page. Join the conversation, get live news on the go, and news and details right here on Globespan 24x7 News.
Travelspan GT is a proud sponsor of Globespan 24x7 News. Here are some exciting news from Travelspan GT. Fares have dropped for next year, starting January 20 to August. American Airlines has cheap fares on non-stop flights to New York. Flights are as low as $306 one way and $540 round trip, all tax included. Take advantage of these cheap fares on American Airlines non-stop flights to New York. Travelspan has also cheap fares to Miami, Toronto, Canada, and the Caribbean. Call Travelspan GT in Georgetown at 227-1701, that's 227-1701, or in Rose Hall call 337-4298, and New Amsterdam at 333-6230. That call Travelspan GT in Georgetown at 227-1701, that's 227-1701, or in Rose Hall, call 337-4287. And in New Amsterdam at 333-6230.
Thanks, Shakima. And now for news in the Caribbean. We'll tell you that the Caribbean region is expected to host the first Congress on Adolescent and Youth Health. The Caribbean region will host the first Congress on Adolescent and Youth Health in Port of Spain, Trinidad and Tobago from October 15 to 17, 2019. The theme of the Congress is Championing Our Wealth, promoting the health and well-being of adolescents and youth in the Caribbean. President of Trinidad and Tobago, Paula May Weeks, will be the featured speaker. Kim Simplis Barrow, First Lady of Belize and Chair of Spouses of Caribbean Leaders Action Network, Terence Dale Singh, Minister of Health, Trinidad and Tobago, Ambassador Erwin LaRocque, CARICOM Secretary General, and Dr. Carissa Etienne, POW Director, are expected to deliver remarks during the opening ceremony on October 14 at the Hyatt Regency in Port of Spain. The Congress, which is organized by a consortium of regional partners, including youth leaders, is expected to increase awareness on issues that are negatively affecting the health and well-being of adolescents and youth in the Caribbean. It is anticipated that the Congress will help to mobilize greater investment for the promotion and protection of the health and well-being of all adolescents and young people in the Caribbean region. Approximately 200 participants are expected to attend, including youth from around the Caribbean, CARICOM youth ambassadors, youth from within key populations, youth development leaders, public health leaders, social activists, and regional civil society representatives. Also, the Caribbean health ministers have agreed to a new plan to improve the quality of health care in the region. Caribbean health ministers have endorsed a series of actions aimed at ensuring that all people throughout the Americas have equitable access to timely, efficient, safe, and quality health services. The ministers are participating in the week-long 57th Directing Council of the Pan American Health Organization, where the strategy and plan of action to improve quality of care in health service delivery 2020 to 2025 was adopted. It sets out a people and community-centered approach that focuses on overcoming persistent barriers to equitable access to quality care. PAHO said health systems in the region of the Americas are characterized by high levels of segmentation and fragmentation that hinders access to quality healthcare services, compromises health outcomes, and results in the inefficient use of available resources. While countries of the region have made progress to improve quality of care in health service delivery, mortality attributable to quality issues remains high, according to PAHO's Dominican-born director, Dr. Carissa Etienne. Their strategy represents a paradigm shift in how countries should approach health care and a move towards care that puts the experience of people and their communities first. And finally, in the region, new efforts are afoot to protect the Caribbean bananas that are under threat from disease. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization has launched an emergency project to curb major plant losses threatened by a fungal disease as part of a renewed effort to help protect banana crops in Latin America and the Caribbean. The FAO said that under its technical cooperation program, the project will work to fight the spread of Fusarium wilt, a fungal plant disease that can wipe out plantations of banana crops, upon which millions of people depend for their livelihoods. FAO Assistant Chief and Regional Representative for Latin America and the Caribbean, Julio Berdegue, said that the role of bananas in providing food and household income in this region cannot be understated. End of quote. According to FAO, bananas are the most traded fruit in the world, and the banana sector serves an essential source of employment and income for thousands of rural households in developing countries, including those in the Caribbean. The FAO said that the TR4, or the tropical race 4 strain of the fungus, was first detected in July in Colombia, where 175 hectares of banana farms were put under quarantine by the Instituto Colombiano Agropecuario, an entity looking after the country's agriculture and fishing sectors. FAO warned that the possibility of the disease spreading would have devastating impacts for farmers and their families across the region. And on the international scene, texts show U.S. officials tied Ukraine meeting to political probes. We'll tell you that U.S. officials pressured their Ukrainian counterparts to launch investigations that could benefit President Donald Trump's personal political agenda in exchange for a meeting between the two countries' leaders. A cache of diplomatic texts released late on Thursday showed. The exchanges were released by Democrats in the House of Representatives as part of an impeachment investigation to determine whether Trump pressed for Ukraine to probe former Vice President Joe Biden and his son Hunter Biden in connection with Ukrainian gas company Burisma. Biden is a leading contender for the 2020 Democratic presidential nomination. His son was on the board of Burisma for a number of years. Kurt Volker, who resigned a week ago as Trump's special representative to Ukraine, provided the messages to members of the House and staff of the House Foreign Affairs, Intelligence and Oversight Committee in a closed-door meeting earlier on Thursday. Democrats are focusing on a July 25 telephone call between Trump and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, in which the Republican president urges Zelensky to investigate Burisma and the Bidens. In the hours before that call, Volker told one advisor to the Ukrainian president that a meeting between the country's two leaders was tied to Kyiv's agreement to investigate the 2016 U.S. election, according to the committees. And Iraq's PM calls for talks as thousands of protesters continue to defy an established curfew. Iraqi Prime Minister Adel Abdul Mahdi has called for dialogue after a third consecutive day of deadly anti-government protests in the capital Baghdad and several southern cities. In a statement quoted by local media on Thursday, Abdul Mahdi's office said the Prime Minister was continuing contacts with protesters in a bid to end the political crisis and return to normal life. Abdul Mahdi was prepared to meet with representatives of peaceful demonstrators to consider their legitimate demands, the statement added. The announcement came as 4,000 protesters rallied in Baghdad, defying a government-enforced curfew to call again for improved services, more jobs, and an end to widespread corruption. The crowds gathered in Baghdad's Tahrir Square and attempted to march onto the central Tahrir Square, only to be met with open fire and heavy tear gas. Police also used live ammunition in the Zafaraniya district of Baghdad, and there were protests in the northwestern Shula district. The demonstrations, which appear to be independent of any political party, started in the capital on Tuesday and later spread to cities across Iraq's mainly Shia south. Those demonstrating have directed their anger at Abdul Mahdi's year-old government and a wider political class, they accuse of being corrupt and doing nothing to improve their lives. And we'll tell you now that the Russian Prime Minister's visit to Cuba shows support amidst U.S. hostility. Russian Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev kicks off an official two-day visit to Havana on Thursday, in a strong show of Russian support for the communist-run island as it faces escalating pressure from the United States. Moscow has sought to renew its commercial, military, and political ties with Cuba in recent years, as part of a broader strategy to expand its presence in Latin America as a counterweight to China and the United States. Russia's support for Cuba is insignificant compared to the role the Soviet Union once played. But analysts said it is still very welcomed as the island's economy suffers from a steep decline in Venezuelan aid and U.S. sanctions. Above all, Medvedev's visit, the highest profile Russian tour since that of President Vladimir Putin back in 2014, is symbolically important, they said. Russia has in particular the capacity to help Cuba out of its current fuel crisis, which Havana blames on U.S. sanctions on energy shipments to the island, although it remains unclear whether it is willing to make such a large commitment. And Ecuador declares state of emergency as fuel protests block roads. Ecuador's President Lenin Moreno declared a state of emergency on Thursday as protests broke out across the country over the end of decades-old fuel subsidies as part of a $2 billion government fiscal reform package. Down with the package, protesters shouted, referring to measures enacted this week as Moreno sets the Andean oil producer on a centrist path after years of leftist rule. With the fuel measure taking effect on Thursday, taxi, bus, and truck drivers blocked streets in the highland capital Quito and in Guayaquil on the Pacific coast. While bus stations were closed, indigenous groups, students, and unions joined the action, blocking roads with rocks and burning tires. In Quito, riot police used tear gas and deployed armored vehicles against mass protesters who threw stones. Officials say the elimination of fuel subsidies was necessary to lift the economy and to stop smuggling. Moreno, who won the election back in 2017 to replace Rafael Correa, told reporters the perverse subsidy in place for 40 years had distorted the economy and protests would not be allowed to paralyze Ecuador. And in Europe, the UK Prime Minister will send a Brexit extension letter, according to court documents. Boris Johnson will send a letter to the EU asking for a Brexit delay if no deal is agreed by October 19, according to government papers submitted to a Scottish court. The document was revealed as campaigners sought a ruling forcing the PM to comply with the law. The QC said it contradicted statements by Johnson in Parliament. But the Prime Minister said the UK will still be leaving on October 31, deal or no deal, but no delay. The so-called Benn Act, named after Labour MP Hilary Benn, who spearheaded its passage into law, requires the government to request an extension to the October 31 Brexit deadline if a deal has not been signed off by Parliament by October 19. And we'll tell you that the University of Guyana and Trent University are collaborating on a $700 million 5-year academic research program. In less than a month, 12 Guyanese will over the next 5 years benefit from a $785 million advanced academic research program in sustainable transformation scholarship aimed at boosting training and research here. The 4 PhDs and 8 master students will journey to the Trent University in Peterborough, Ontario, Canada, to expand their knowledge in 5 disciplines. With funding from the Canadian oil and gas companies CGX and Frontier Energy Corps, FEC, the academics will become the central trainers that will transform Guyana into a robust, sustainable economy. At the University of Guyana's Education Lecture Theatre today, Deputy Vice Chancellor of Philanthropy, Alumni and Civic Engagement and Chair of the Transitional Management Committee, Dr. Paloma Mohammed said the project will open new doors for the country's premier tertiary institution. During the 5 years, students will be exposed to training and research in programs including watershed ecosystems and water quality, sustainable food and agriculture, indigenous studies, natural products, material physics, and chemistry. Funding for the project will also allow for the development and funding of local research areas of national need for Guyana. It will also provide technical support in areas of critical transformation of the university here. And that's all for today in the region and around the world. I'm Kingsley Bryan. Thank you for watching. Let's join Kumar Doshi for TechBeat.
Thank you, Kingsley. Namaste, salam, good day everyone. Thanks for tuning into TechBeat right here on Globespan 24x7, and I'm Kumar Doshi coming to you from India. Today I'm going to tell you more about augmented reality. Augmented reality has been a hot topic in software development circles for a number of years. Augmented reality, or commonly known as AR, is an interactive experience of a real-world environment where the objects that reside in the real world are enhanced by computer-generated perceptual information, sometimes across multiple sensory modalities, including visual, auditory, and haptic. When someone talks about AR, they are referring to technology that overlays information and virtual objects on real-world scenes in real time. It uses the existing environment and adds information to it to make a new artificial environment. In AR, the user is provided with a computer-generated information that enhances their perception of reality. Hardware components for AR are processor, display, sensor, and input devices. Modern mobile computing devices like smartphones and tablets and computers contain these elements like camera and processors. With deep software integration with the hardware, AR can become a very useful tool in many fields. Early PCs, smartphones, and tablet applications for AR focused on games, but the use of AR are broader. AR can be a very useful tool in medical field. Students at the Cleveland Clinic at Case Western Reserve University, for example, will now learn anatomy utilizing an AR headset, allowing them to delve into the human body in an interactive 3D format. AR is particularly being very useful in education. While technologies like tablets have become widespread in many schools and classrooms, teachers and educators are now ramping up students' learning experience with AR. There are apps already being used in classrooms so that students can view their classes via a smartphone or tablet for a richer learning environment. Other applications of AR are military, navigation, and entertainment, and hundreds of them more. A full potential of AR is yet to be discovered. As technology improves, there will be thousands of more applications that we are unaware of now. That's all today at TechBeat. I'm Kumar Doshi. I'm back to the studio in Guyana for more news to come. Thanks for watching and see you soon.
Thanks, Kumar. And that has brought us to the end of today's news. Before we go, here's a recap of our major headlines. Opposition's refusal to return. My apologies. We'll now shift our attention to sport news.
Thank you, Samuel. To take a look at the sports section. Guyana Amazon Warriors continue their winning streak, making it a record-breaking 9 out of 9 in the 2019 Hero CPL after they trashed Jamaica Talawas by 77 runs despite slumping to a 8-4 at the start of their innings. The table-topping Warriors lost 4 wickets in 4 balls across the first 2 overs of the night. At one point, both O'Shane Thomas and Derval Green were on hat tricks at the same time. Both Sherman Hetmaya and Nicholas Puran fell off their first ball, while Brandon King and Chandrapal Hemraj made just 1 and 2 respectively. Only 2 further wickets would fall in the rest of the innings though, as Captain Shaub Malik, first alongside Sherfane Rutherford and then Kimo Paul, engineered a superb recovery with an unbeaten 73 from 45 balls. With 156 for 6 on the board, it was over to the Warriors' battery of spinners to work their magic, and they didn't disappoint. Chris Gale became the third high-profile first ball casualty when Chris Green breached his defense to give the Tallawahs run chase its own dramatic early setback. And Imran Tahir was soon in on the act as well when Chadwick Walton picked out Green at long on for just 8. Glenn Phillips attempted a Malik-style recovery and did emulate the Warriors captain in going past 1,000 career hero CPL runs, but there the comparison ended. He made 21 from 28 before also picking out Green at long on to hand Hemraj a wicket. By now, the required rate had already got beyond the 10 and over, and although Trevon Griffith did manage the unlikely feat of taking 2 boundaries from Chris Green's final ball, he still finished with 1 from 20 from his over. The Tallawahs were never able to get it back under control. Qais Ahmad became the 3rd bowler of the night to take 2 wickets in 2 balls, when he had Dwayne Smith caught and bowled for 2 before bowling Imran Khan for his ball. Unlike Thomas and Derval Green, though, he had no hat-trick opportunity as those wickets came from the final 2 balls of an impressive spell. Another win for the Warriors should surprise nobody given the season they're having, but it all looked a very long way after 8 balls of their innings. The Warriors managed to remain on top of the points table and are hoping to take their excellent form into their match against the defending champions, TKR. Another highly anticipated match is expected tonight between the Warriors and the Knight Riders. Football's world governing body, FIFA, has ruled that €6 million must be paid by Cardiff City to French side Nantes for the transfer of Emilios Sala, the striker who died in a plane crash over the English Channel earlier this year. Football's world governing body FIFA has ruled that €6 million must be paid by Cardiff City to French side Nantes for the transfer of Emiliano. Football's world governing body FIFA has ruled that €6 million must be paid by Cardiff City to French side Nantes for the transfer of Emiliano Sala, the striker who died in a plane crash over the English Channel earlier this year. Sala and pilot David Ibbotson were both traveling from Nantes towards Cardiff on January 21st when their light aircraft crashed, 2 days after the transfer had been agreed, according to FIFA. This dispute between the 2 clubs centered around whether Sala was a Cardiff or a Nantes player at the time of the plane journey, and whether Cardiff would have to pay the transfer fee agreed by the clubs. The €6 million fee corresponds to the first installment that was due to be paid after the transfer had been agreed, said FIFA. Monday's ruling can be appealed to the Court of Arbitration for Sport in Lausanne. It was revealed in August that Sala and Ibbotson were both exposed to high levels of carbon monoxide inside the plane before the crash. Sala, who scored 42 goals for Nantes since joining from Bordeaux in 2015, had just signed for Cardiff, which has since been relegated from the Premier League for a reported €15 million. The 28-year-old was on his way to his new club, having said goodbye to his teammates in France. An Italian tennis umpire has been suspended after videos emerged online of him telling a teenage ball girl she was very sexy. Gianluca Marcella, 46, appears to harass the girl during a match between Portugal's Pedro Sousa and Italy's Enrico Dalla Valle in a men's tournament in Florence last week. Open quote. "You are fantastic," end of quote. He could be overheard saying, according to a video circulating online, open quote, "very sexy," end of quote. After the next set, he continues, open quote, "Are you okay? It's hot. Are you feeling hot? Physically or emotionally? Both? You can't handle it anymore?" End of quote. The girl is only 16 years old, according to Italian media reports. The Association of Tennis Professionals said Marcella was immediately dismissed from the tournament when the matter was brought to the light, and a full investigation has been initiated. Another video from the same game match shows Marcella addressing one of the players during a toilet break, urging him to stay focused and finish the set because it's too hot. Over to you, Samuel.
Thanks, Kingsley. We'll now wrap up the news with our major headlines. Opposition's refusal to return to Parliament may result in a crisis, says Attorney General. Data from recent house-to-house registration to be made available for public scrutiny. PPPC to consider direct cash transfer of some anticipated oil revenues. Gawu says second sugar crop behind schedule due to multiple issues. And Rihanna and Letita Wright to be invited to Ghana's 50th Republic celebrations. Thanks for watching Globespan 24/7 News. On behalf of myself, Samuel Zutnanda, the news and technical team in Ghana, New York, and India, until next time, do have a pleasant rest of the evening.